the SOPE and George Washington University webinar on harnessing the power of AI in life sciences and healthcare. My name is Jeff Hausfeld. I'm the chairman of the board and co-founder of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. It is a non-for-profit organization that lies at the intersection of innovation and commercialization of healthcare and life science projects. We are agnostic as to what you're working on. We just want to help you succeed in what you're working on by having these kind of educational platforms to make you understand what's available, what are the opportunities, and what are the obstacles in bringing your idea to patients. So I encourage you to look at the SOPE website, www.soapnet.org, join SOPE for our educational programs and for our networking. I'm also the chairman of the board and chief medical officer of Biofactura, a biotech company in Frederick, Maryland that specializes in biodefense and biosimilars and has a division called Capital Biologics that is a full-service CDMO for biologic research, development, and manufacturing. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian to introduce GW Tech Transfer Office.
Thank you, Jeff. As usual, a pleasure to collaborate with you on bringing this really exciting event to the community to learn about hot topics in healthcare and commercialization and entrepreneurship. We have a great panel today. I'm looking forward to that and answering a lot of questions and learning about applications of AI. A little bit about our office here at GW. We're focused on taking the research output from GW from the lab to the world. We're working with entrepreneurs, investors, startups, and small companies to develop our ideas and generally patented inventions into new products and services. We have open doors, so please feel free to email or call us afterwards and let's have a chat, get to know each other, and see if we can find a fit for a future project. I do want to highlight that we've been giving out some de-risking funds to our projects here at GW. We gave out 5 of these technology maturation awards in the fall, and we have an open call right now that's going through June, so we'll have some nice announcements next month of cool new projects that we're supporting to help make them more attractive for licensees. I want to highlight out of this list today the prognostic solutions for very early stage breast cancer that this investigator In-Hee Chung is also applying AI to. So that's a really neat project that fits right in this topic today. Also, we support our startups that we license to, after we've done the deal, helping them to get additional funding to support development as well as pitching it to investors. So both internal funds and external funds that we're connecting with there. And before we get started into talking to our panelists, I do want to highlight some recent news in this space in terms of protecting your AI-based inventions. Last month, there was the first patent case at the Federal Circuit involving applying AI to a specific application of a certain data set. And I'll let you go and look up the details of the case, but the key takeaways are that the court made a decision that basically claims that do nothing more than applying established methods of machine learning to a new data environment are not patent eligible. So that was the issue. The company that brought that owned the patent, they got it shot down. They didn't have enough technical description in there about what they did new to the model or how they were processing the data and that sort of thing. So it's really important as you go to protect your ideas for AI and healthcare that you're getting a very complete technical description of your improvement in the application. With that, I would like to hand it back to Dr. Hausfeld to get our conversation started.
Thank you, Brian. So in other words, when you go to pitch, don't just say we applied AI to our technology without really understanding what that technology was and how you can describe it in order for it to be patentable. So let's first introduce our panelists today because we have a really good panel. We have Henry Kaminsky, Greg Montalbano, and Harvey Castro. Each of you, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure, I'll start. My name
Okay.
is Greg Montalbano. I'm one of the principal owners of MIDI Medical Product Development. We are a medical product development consulting firm, and we work with startup and emerging companies all the way through to large OEM medical manufacturers, helping them innovate new product platforms around their tech. So we're made up of individuals that can analyze market research, voice of the customer review, understand pre, during, and post-usage ceremony. Also, our engineering, software, electronic, material manufacturing, mechanical engineering, and industrial designers and ergonomic experts cross-pollinate their discipline in order to generate next step innovation for our clients.
Thank you, Greg. Henry?
Yeah, Henry Kaminsky. I'm a professor of neurology here at GW, and I've done basic translational clinical work in rare disease, myasthenia gravis. And so I ran into a applied mathematician. We've started getting together, addressing some problems in my disease, so to speak, and happy to tell you what I'm doing.
Thank you. Harvey?
I'm an ER doctor, been doing it for 20 years. Big picture, I wrote the first book on how to use ChatGPT in healthcare in 22, and I'm an advisor for the country on Singapore and using AI in healthcare, as well as the Texas Medical Association. And I currently just consult and create my own AI tools to serve other companies that they're needing. So thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you, Harvey. So I want to read everyone an advertisement for an AI firm that I found just yesterday. And then we'll have each of our panelists talk about the things they do. But let me just frame the conversation. So this was the advertisement. I'm going to just read it to you. Learn how cutting-edge AI tools empower R&D teams, IP strategists, and innovation leaders to do the following. Streamline workflows and enhance collaboration by automating tedious tasks like literature synthesis and patent analysis. Shorten R&D timelines with AI-driven insights for faster hypothesis validation and decision-making, and unlock hidden opportunities in idea scouting and competitive intelligence using predictive analytics. Learning how AI works is not just the future, it's the key to dominating the present. Transform your workflow, outpace competitors, turn scientific challenges into breakthroughs. And the questions that I want our panelists to answer and to explain to our attendees is, how much of this is help? How much is hype? What is actionable today? And how can each of us harness this technology? So with that, Greg, I'm going to have you start us off with your presentation because you give a nice overview and explain a little bit about AI structure.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I'll share my slide. Just one second. Okay. So what I'd like to do is, when we're approaching a product development effort, medical device systems, whether it's surgical or diagnostic, imaging, whatever it may be, there's a lot of machine learning and AI applications that could be applied to any device that we're developing. And ultimately, as developers, we're starting at ground zero and defining the usage ceremony, how it fits in with the end use environment, how it facilitates better patient outcomes. So we need to break down the core elements of AI. We need to understand the minutia of the structure of how AI can be applied within medtech. So typically, just to back up and to describe the three core elements. So typically there's a data set, which is basically a collection of curated data. So AI powered begins with the data that it's trained on. And in medtech, this includes things like patient records, imaging, scanning, clinical trial results. the more diverse the data set, the more accurate and reliable the AI becomes. So Jeff, to your point, with regards to whomever is advertising those AI assistants, really, it's about the data set as well, not just about the vehicle of whatever they can provide for you. And that begins the process. Ultimately, there's a learning algorithm as well, which is, again, a set of instructions that turns something, an input, into another thing, an output. So a learning algorithm is really a step-by-step instruction guiding on how AI system processes data. So the algorithm systematically takes those inputs, patient symptoms, imaging scans, transforms them into outputs like diagnoses and treatment recommendations. And then we have the AI predictions. So the AI algorithm learned to write its own instructions to ultimately turning those inputs to outputs and the predictive outputs. And ultimately, this helps better understand how AI works in practice for machine learning. So really taking that next step with machine learning and the methods in AI. AI really works through machine learning. AI is a catch-all phrase, that really is, its underpinning is machine learning. So AI operates through this machine learning, which allows the computers to learn and improve from data without being explicitly programmed for each task. And by feeding an algorithm high quality data, which again, that's the foundation, machine learning enables it to develop the strategies and improve its performance over time. So there's a breakdown relative to machine learning, the most commonly used machine learning methods. So you really need to understand the methods in order to develop AI, or even to understand how it could help you, as in that advertisement that you were describing. So it starts with supervised learning. So that's the basic, the ground level. So what is supervised learning? It's like teaching with a guide. So the algorithm is trained on a labeled data set where the correct outcomes are already known. And the goal is to enable the algorithm to learn from this data and apply what it's learned to new unseen data. So an example, imagine you have groups of medical records, one with known diagnoses, one without. And by training the model on the labeled group, it can accurately predict and diagnose its unlabeled group. And this mirrors how students learn from examples with correct answers. The next level up is unsupervised learning. So what is that? Ultimately, unsupervised learning is like learning without a teacher. So the algorithm is given a data set without labeled outcomes and must find patterns or groupings on its own. So for example, let's say a data set of patients with various symptoms and lab results, ages and genders exists, but with no diagnoses. So the algorithm might group the patients together with similar attributes, potentially revealing the new insights or associations that were previously unnoticed. And this method is useful for discovering hidden patterns. Then we have reinforcement learning. So what's that? It's really learning about going through trial and error. So the algorithm learns to make sequence of decisions by receiving feedback only after a task is completed, rather than at every step. So an example, you can consider training a model to simulate the spread of a disease in a virtual society. The model tests different interventions. And then when a scenario result exists with fewer infections, the algorithm reinforces those strategies for successful outcomes. It's sort of like, not to compare AI to dogs, but it's like training a dog. You reward it for the desired behavior, encouraging the dog to repeat it. And then we have deep learning, neural networks. So what's that? Deep learning is a powerful subset of machine learning, and it involves neural networks with multiple layers. And it's modeled after the human brain structure, allowing the algorithm to learn intricate patterns and relationships. So deep learning model can analyze thousands of medical images, learn to detect subtle patterns like early signs of cancer that may be missing by looking at it with the human eye. So it's a layered structure approach. So just thinking about that, also, that again, it helps you with the foundation of understanding how can AI help me in whatever you're doing. For me, it's product development, it's medical product development. I also look at when we're taking on a program that has AI and machine learning, we look at the three major levels of AI in medtech. So Nick Bostrom, he's a philosopher, University of Oxford. He described three major levels in the development of AI in his book, The Superintelligence. And the first is artificial narrow intelligence, ANI. So ANI is an incredible pattern recognition, and it has abilities in huge data sets. So, which makes it perfect for solving text, voice, image-based classification, and clustering problems. So it's an algorithm that can excel at precisely defined single tasks. It can play chess like nobody else, yet its IQ is at 0. So why does it matter? Most of the AI in medtech today falls under this category, ANI, which is designed to excel at very specific tasks, such as analyzing medical images, as I mentioned, automating routine processes, ultimately recognizing that there's current AI capabilities that are narrow, and it helps developers focus on creating devices that leverage its strength, such as high accuracy in data recognition without overestimating its abilities. The next is artificial general intelligence. So AGI one day could have a human being's comprehension of total cognitive capability. And this is human level AI. So it can reason, it can argue, it can memorize, it can solve issues like you do. And, again, this is more future tripping. Why does this matter? So AGI represents a future state where AI could achieve a human-like cognitive ability, performing a wide range of tasks with flexibility and understanding. While we're not there yet, understanding the AGI is important because it sets a benchmark for future innovation, and it also helps developers like myself set realistic expectations about what AI can currently do and what the future may yield. And then we look at artificial superintelligence. So this is super future tripping, where humanity would not be able to grasp its knowledge and understanding and reasoning. And ultimately, why does this matter? So ASI would surpass human intelligence and raise significant ethical and safety concerns, as we all worry about. So although it remains hypothetical, understanding ASI is crucial with regards to developing, because it emphasizes the need for careful consideration of long-term implication of AI in healthcare. So understanding these distinctions is critical for me and medtech developers, so to see how it influences medical device, to set realistic goals, enhance patient care, and maintain ethical standards. Going to the next slide, I like to break down AI automation into 5 levels. Okay, so when we're developing, it's like what level, to what degree is AI facilitating its power to the care flow or whatever it may be. So let's explore this. Level 1 is humans only. Obviously, that's our baseline. That's what we had, before AI really kind of started taking over. So this is our foundational level. All tasks are performed by humans without any AI assistance, and this includes manual procedures, data processing tasks, simple algorithms that may not be used, but it's really not AI. So an example of this mostly is medical procedures that fall into this category. Thinking of a surgeon performing laparoscopy or a researcher conducting meta-analysis, or in those scenarios. So really, it's a human experience in the forefront with no AI involvement. The second level is shadow mode, where the physician is ultimately being the teacher and AI is the student. So at this level, AI acts as the trainee, learning, observing human experts, similar to how medical students shadow physicians. And as AI is in shadow mode, it follows the decision-making process of physicians without interfering. So imagine a physician diagnosing an X-ray while an AI algorithm silently monitors it, taking notes and learning from this process. And this data is logged in and it's used to refine the future diagnostic capabilities of the AI algorithm. And level 3 is the AI assistant. So here AI begins to actively support clinical decision-making by offering suggestions. AI systems analyzes data, CT chest scans, or others, and ultimately highlights potential issues to the physician to investigate further. So an AI might scan a database of a chest CT image, identify suspicious signs, bring that to the attention of the physicians, who then make the final judgment. Level 4, which again is quite in the future, is partial automation, where AI generates its own diagnosis. So however, if AI encounters uncertainty, it seeks the assistance of a human physician. And this level represents a collaborative effort between AI and healthcare professionals. And then level 5 is quite in the future and more speculation than reality. Is full automation is where AI systems operate independently without human input. And these systems can perform entire tasks, such as analyzing mammograms, others, and then ultimately deciding what the next steps are without consulting with a physician. So this ultimately, this fear of AI replacing physicians looms large within our industry, but it's more likely that AI will continue to excel at specific tasks, complementing rather than replacing human professionals. And by understanding these 5 levels, it really allows us to understand, where we're heading and, what ultimately how to develop these products. The next slide is AI challenges. So ultimately, I see it as 4 buckets of challenges. So there's the ethical AI use, there's transparency. So many AI systems, especially deep learning models, function as black boxes, and it makes their reasoning difficult to interpret. They can hinder clinical trust and adoption. And also within ethics and AI use is clinical accountability. So if AI contributes to an error, it's not always clear who's responsible, the doctor, the developer, the hospital. Ethical use requires clear lines of responsibility in this regard. The second bucket of AI challenges is data privacy and security. So we have patient data confidentiality. So AI needs massive data sets, raising the risk of data breaches. So if you're using all those data sets into one algorithm and you have one infiltration, you have an issue. So strict compliance with HIPAA, as well as other regulatory requirements, is essential. And then cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So AI-driven medical devices and platforms may introduce new cybersecurity risks, making healthcare infrastructure incredibly vulnerable. Another bucket is complexity of regulation and framework. So we have an evolving regulatory landscape. So AI solutions frequently evolve through continuous learning from new data sets, complicating adherence to basically static regulatory approval processes that the FDA has and ISO standards. Also considering validation and performance monitoring. So regulatory agencies require extensive validation of AI systems to confirm their safety and efficacy. However, the adaptive learning aspect and nature of AI complicates this long-term validation process. And then the last bucket really is overcoming biases with AI datasets. So inherent dataset bias. AI algorithms can reflect biases inherent within training datasets, and we need to ensure that the datasets represent broad demographic groups, and that's crucial relative to equitable AI applications. So I know that's quite a mouthful, but that was basically the full part of my presentation. To truly understand, again, the basic elements, the core elements, and how to apply AI in developing medical devices for life science and the medical market as well.
Very good. Thank you, Greg. I think you've given us a good understanding as to what the building blocks are for AI and machine learning and some of the potential obstacles that we'll face as the technology improves. Henry, can I ask you to share your thoughts with us now?
Sure, no problem. I will try to share my screen. Hopefully this all works out. Okay, and how does that look on your end? Or
If you
We
can
still see
switch
the
this-
second side of the screen.
Okay. Any luck there?
So far it's black. Try advancing. There you go.
All right, let me just go back here. Okay, excellent. So let me start. So first of all, I have to tell you that I'm a neurologist. I'm not a machine learning guy. I don't know those things, but I got lucky enough to start working with Mark Garbe, who's, as I mentioned, is a applied mathematician, expert in this area, and has been applying various mathematical techniques to biological and medical questions for the last 2 decades. And so one thing about that, I think it's important, is that that combination of a clinician, or for that matter, a biologist in the life sciences, and a bioinformatics person and a expert in AI is key. And they have very different cultures, right? And so I think that should be appreciated as a big challenge. But so I start with an unmet need in my field. So as I mentioned, I studied myasthenia gravis. It's a rare disease, which is one problem. It's an autoimmune disease and a neuromuscular disease that fluctuates over time. And so there's certain unmet needs just generally in taking care of these patients, but very specifically in clinical trials, which I'm interested in, right? So there's a requirement for in-person examinations, which necessitates subject travel. That's a burden on everybody involved: missed work, personal conflicts, compromising recruitment and retention. And these are expensive trials, right? Multi-million-dollar trials. Then the people who do the clinical trial outcomes require specialized training. They're often research coordinators because you really can't trust a busy physician to get these done correctly, quite frankly. And so there's a lot of training involved. And again, as for rare disease, there's a limited number of centers and research coordinators, and these may turn over during a trial, which increases, and this is key, increases variability and assessment of performances, leading to retraining. So with that variability, and you're relying on a specific clinical outcome measure to decide on whether a drug is actually efficacious, that leads to a larger N required because of that variability. So if you can decrease that variability, you can make it easier for subjects to participate and decrease training requirements across the globe. These are multinational trials in rare diseases. That would be a huge benefit. And so I'm just going to tell you briefly a story on an FDA-approved digital biomarker for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And so just briefly, you see this actinomyo. It's an accelerometer and pedometer that's applied to, in this case, children with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And so there's the technology. It can be uploaded to a cloud server and used to measure acceleration over a time period, as I've written here. So the speed of the fastest strides taken for a wearer by over 180 hours. So you get a continuous metric here. So that's an important piece here. And it's not in a clinic where there's a 6-minute timed walk that is not representative of the real life for this patient. And so this was evaluated in a very rigorous fashion for safety, tolerability, further on the reliability of the agent, then correlation with existing metrics. And you can see the correlation coefficient there, 0.78. Now, one would think that actually the gold standard is this actinomyo. And then ultimately a change over time, right? These kids deteriorate over 6 months, and we could detect that. Okay, well, so what? What's the impact here? This is the kind of usual power analysis done to decide on an intervention and its impact over 24 weeks. And so you determine what kind of N would be needed for doing this clinical trial. And it's 14 patients, because the high accuracy, limited variability, and the reflection of change in time. And so this is significantly lower than all phase 3 trials. And I think there's also a metric there. You have to appreciate that there's safety and such, so you need to increase the N for those purposes. But it is dramatically less, and therefore fewer patients, more rapid recruitment, more reliable data, and shorter trials, which means less cost and potentially drug coming to patients quicker. So that goes to my work with Mark, and we set out with the idea that we want to quantitate the neuromuscular examination for myasthenia gravis in or outside the clinic, anywhere in the world and at any time, right? So that addresses those unmet needs, and obviously with greater accuracy. And so we have validated this and developed it. There's our publications. But let me give you an idea of this, right? So as you'll see in subsequent slides, and I'll just run through this, we developed, on existing technologies that identify anatomical markers. We were very thoughtful and continue to be very thoughtful, related to what Greg has already said. The input for our learning models is very important, right? You need quality data and a lot of it to actually train these models correctly. And here I'll just kind of move through this. I think many people probably are familiar with this, but there's established facial recognition. So one thing that we needed to do is allow our computer vision to detect the appropriate landmarks, and those are those red dots. And then we verified these, and mind you, we had a bank of 102 videos that were actually developed for a different purpose during the pandemic to evaluate patients with myasthenia outside the clinics, right? We may have already forgotten that for at least a year to 18 months, clinical research was stopped at most centers. And so we adapted by doing these video examinations on a set of standardized evaluations that had been developed for another purpose. So just to get to the point here, right? So here we have a patient with myasthenia gravis. And by the way, one of the hallmarks here is that they develop increasing eyelid droop. And so first of all, this patient had 0 complaints of progressive eyelid droop, and a experienced physician couldn't detect this on clinical examination in the hour before this video was taken, and that person was me. I didn't think the patient has any problems. Now this is pretty subtle, but you can see this green line. There's a deterioration in the lid position. And obviously, we've done this on now our sets of what is actually, it's not reflected here, but 102 videos. These are control subjects. We were very mindful in who we selected. Had individuals from age 18 to 82. 20% of the population were African American. We had just 2 or 3 Asians, and then the rest white, half and half sexes. But you can see in there that we're able to detect pathology in patients, and we have a continuous variable of the eyelid droop, not the mild, moderate, severe that clinicians would use in this metric. And this didn't come out quite the way I expected, but that's all right. So this is another standard test for myasthenia gravis. The patient extends their arms. And again, this patient was feeling great. Had no problems. And on my usual strength examination, there was not a problem. But here we can detect a slow deterioration and drift in the arm position. And again, this is in our greater population. All our control subjects were normal. And so I've just shown you two of the examinations, but we also looked at standing exercises, voice calibration, facial weakness, movement of lips. Also discovered that the spatial entropy, so basically the variation in voice pitch and volume was significantly less in all our patients with myasthenia gravis, even those who had no complaints about voice or speech problems, compared to our controls. So I think we discovered a new metric that we had not expected. And then so this goes to where we want to go with this. And hopefully, if your volume suddenly increases, I apologize. So, watch out for that.
Welcome to our medical testing facility. I am happy to guide you through your exam today. I was developed to make the medical testing better and easier. You can interrupt me to ask questions about the exam at any time. The exam will take 10 to 15 minutes. I will provide step-by-step instructions. Our technology will analyze your muscle strength and deliver an exact medical assessment. As soon as we complete the test, the results will be available to you and your physician. Let's start.
So I won't belabor that further, but this is about a 20-minute examination that our aim is to have this avatar communicate with the patient or subject, as it is. That can be done at home prior to a clinic visit or a clinical trial visit or eliminate a clinical trial visit. As I mentioned, these trials are international, so somebody a subject in Japan can be evaluated by the same avatar, which is not speaking English, right? It's now adapted to Japanese or German or Spanish. There's obviously, a need for training. This is fit for purpose too, right? We are not interested in having this avatar diagnosed. We are only interested in this avatar producing a reliable examination and identifying when it can't be done, right? We appreciate some patients, and we've already experienced that, just cannot do a test reliably, even when a human being is guiding them. And so there'd be a star reflection that there was a failure in performing the evaluation. So we're slowly moving ahead with this and developing a larger population of patients for our system to learn from, and then also starting to optimize this avatar. So still in the future. And I just want to acknowledge Mark Garbe, who's the CEO of Care Constitution, who really has done all the work, and actually the NIH funding that provided the opportunity to make these videos. So I am done, and I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Henry, and certainly have shown us some ways of implementing AI in healthcare today. The questions that I'll pose to you afterwards are how accurate these avatars can be, and how do we design a program where you can do a side-by-side comparison of a clinician or a technician doing these tests versus the avatar and come out with some reasonable results. We'll have that on our Q&A. Harvey, let's go to you and have you tell us about what you're doing in AI.
Well, let me share this with the sound.
And before you start, Harvey, I'll do one plug here. We have Anna Soyun Lee, who's on the program with us. She's a medical student at GW, and she has accepted the position to be the leader of the student chapter of SOPE in the National Capital Area. So if there are any students or pre-med students that are interested in joining, please contact Anna Soyun Lee or myself, and we'll give you some information. This is open to any of the students really in this area that would like to join. We hope to make it a valuable experience for you. Harvey, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, first of all, honored to be with this amazing panel, and let's have some fun. Let's just start up.
Listen to me very
You can hear
carefully.
that. If not,
It's
no
one
worries.
of my mission parameters.
I'll drive. Trust me.
All right,
Listen
so
to
all
me
about
very
trust in
carefully.
AI, as you know. So I'm just gonna hyper focus. I'll be quick, just to kind of give you some quick examples. Just know that this video clip is actually a little old. The technology is way better than this. Google literally just made some cool announcements yesterday or day before yesterday for video, type to video. And my angle is this: as an ER doctor, one of my pain points is discharge instructions. In the sense that if I don't do it right, my patients will bounce back. They don't understand. I give them a bunch of paperwork, and I know they're not reading it. Half the stuff probably has legal stuff in there, and I get it. But if I can communicate, if I can use AI to leverage how I speak to them, now I can perform better medicine in the sense that if I say it wrong, they may bounce back because they didn't know how to use an inhaler, something really simple. And so I want to make sure that that information is given to them correctly. The other thing is, and this is the example, if I'm working I used to work right by the airport. So literally anyone that got sick in the air, if the plane got grounded in Dallas, they would come to my hospital. So case in point, I would see people from all over the world, and I don't speak all these languages. And so often I would get a phone call to help me translate. I literally stick the phone in front of the patient and be like, speak. And then the other line's like, I don't know what language this is. And then they would take minutes. And then when the minutes becomes more minutes, when I'm an ER doctor, I need stuff like yesterday, especially if they're literally dying in front of me. And so having an ability of using AI to translate would be huge. So here's just a quick example of,
Don't worry, I'm here with you.
now,
Together, we'll manage
he's got a really
this,
cool
and you'll be
accent,
feeling
which
better
I don't
soon.
have. And then I just went ahead and then
Don't
translated it.
worry, I'm here with
Let me get to the
you.
next slide. Then I did it in Spanish.
No te preocupes, estoy aquí contigo.
It's the same
Juntos
thing.
lograremos
So I
esto
took my
y
face,
pronto
cloned
te
it,
sentirás
added
mejor.
voice, and then the idea is pretty simple. Use the language, convert it to what they need, and if I speak their culture, their language, they're more likely to listen to me. Again, I have no stock in Google, but day before yesterday, they had this Google Meets, and I thought this was crazy. They started it with Spanish. So as the other person is speaking in Spanish, I'm hearing it in English. And then as I'm speaking in English, they're hearing it in Spanish. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a godsend in
No te
healthcare. Now, I was in Germany speaking in Berlin about a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, okay, I gotta take this picture. So I took my still shot that's at the top. And then I thought, for a kid, I can convert this to a kid discharge instruction, make my face into an animation, make the kid laugh. And so then here's just a quick demo.
Hi, I'm Dr. Harvey Castro, but most know me as Dr. GPT.
And so again, it'd just be a quick discharge instruction. Another thing I thought of is I'm doing a prototype for cancer patients where I'm putting the AI in a plushie. The kid is having cancer. They're going through the hospital. They're scared. They're about to get an MRI, blood work. Why not be able to talk to the plushie and say, hey, I'm about to get an MRI. It has NFC technology. It knows that it's next to the MRI. And then start talking to the kid and saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is the procedure. No metal allowed, blah, blah, blah. And they're speaking their language, their favorite voice, sex, their character. That's another way of delivering healthcare. And so I started thinking, well, on the discharge instructions, why not leverage AI? Again, what I just said, the big paperwork, I know the parents aren't reading it. I know the kid for sure can't read it. And so why not take those core principles, put them into what a coloring book, what each page is. And now if it's how to use an inhaler, why they should talk to a doctor. Now, instead of giving them paperwork, I literally can give them a coloring book. Now that kid understands it's speaking their language. And then for the older kids, I said, you know what, we'll just do a comic strip. Or that video example. Another example would be if, God forbid, I tell you, you have cancer, from that moment on, you're not hearing me anymore. You're still thinking, crap, I have cancer. You're not, your moment has stopped. So I thought, why not record the conversation, record the video, and then if I have to, there's a technology that I can take that image that I showed you, image, and then video, and not video, just a script of me speaking, and it combines the two, and now I can give that patient that video. And why does that work? Because when that patient goes home, their spouse is going to be like, what did Dr. Castro say? And they won't know, even though we spend time. But if they have the transcript, if I'm leveraging AI, now I'm making a difference. So anyway, so this was just a quick example. Back in 23, I cloned my voice
Correct
just for
inhaler
fun,
technique
and
for
this is it.
children. Managing asthma triggered by sports. Communicating asthma symptoms to adults.
So anyway, the skinny is in 23. What I would do is, since I was able to clone my voice, I would convert the discharge instructions with my clone voice, and then I would give patients audio of my discharge instructions. That way, it was that familiar voice. They trust me, and it sounded pretty cool. I did a bad trick to my mom. I played the audio to my mom, like, "Mom, what'd you think?" She's like, "Oh, Harvey, you did great." And I'm like, "Mom, that wasn't me. That was my AI, but it sounds like me." The other thing I thought, man, we have patients that really can't hear, and I don't know sign language. And I thought, well, if I use AI, I can. And so now I could take discharge instruction, plug them into an AI that's doing sign language, and it creates a video of sign language. And I thought, man, what a way to deliver medicine. I'm not biasing just because you can't hear. Now I can give you sign language, which is, I thought was pretty cool. The other thing I did, and I actually hesitated when I did this in 23. I did this thing called MediHelper back then. It was a new thing, having a GPT. And what I did was simple. The average person in the United States only spends 13 minutes with their doctor. And so think about it. For those doctors that are out there listening, half the time is like, how are you doing? Let me look at your bracelet, make sure it's your name, blah, blah, blah. And how was your weekend? What are you doing for Memorial Day? But at the end of the day, the patient doesn't know what to ask. And so what I created was a GPT for free. And the reason I hesitated, I want to make sure I wasn't going to get sued over this thing. But the skinny was this. Patients, I told them, put information that is not any of the 18 identifiers for HIPAA. Example, like they have high blood pressure, diabetes, and then they enter that information into the GPT. And then I have it set up where now the GPT walks through and says, okay, here are the follow-up questions for your annual. Here are the things you need to ask the doctor. Here's the pathology. That way, when we meet, they have a list of questions. Those 13 minutes are high yield, and I figured they're getting better care. Just for fun, I just wanted to throw this video. I took this image, I made myself into an action figure, and I thought, you know what, let's just animate it. Now, I do not walk like that, but it is kind of funny. So I'm at 99,000 views on LinkedIn. So if you guys help me out, maybe I'll hit 100,000 views for that one. And then at the end of the day, I always say, let's have fun.
Every choice shapes reality. Stay in the past or embrace AI-driven care. Dr. GPT is the reality override.
Hasta la vista, baby.
But anyway, so I'll exit. I just wanted to have some fun there and show you some videos. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Harvey. It was great. Well, you've seen a nice potpourri of AI and machine learning, from its structure to its application to its future application. Let's go through a few questions and for the for the audience, and then I have some questions coming in from the audience. We are in a very highly regulated environment, both in our laboratories as well as in our hospitals and in our healthcare systems. Given the need for explainability, validation, regulatory compliance, how do we as entrepreneurs and as caretakers navigate using AI with all those barriers in front of us? Greg, I'll let you start.
Sure. So it is ultimately you have to, when you're developing a device and potentially you're worried about the regulatory roadmap and how to identify a proper path to achieve your 510K. You really need to understand your device and your claims with regards to the device functionality or the system, as well as your AI. And my advice to startups is don't bite off more than you can chew. A lot of startups, emerging companies, with regards to their device and their AI, when they're thinking about hitting the market, their claims relative to, the AI and its application are bigger than their funding, are bigger than their ability to do verification validation. And ultimately, you may want to be more conservative with regards to how AI is going to be applied to your device and to the marketplace, and then think about future second iterations and others once you're in a more of a profitability or a device in the marketplace mode. Additionally, just thinking about AI ultimately and machine learning, ultimately it's a moving target. And the FDA is making great efforts and strides in order to be nimble and understand how the device will modify its operating procedure relative to diagnoses or others over time as it learns on its own. And how do you verify that? How do you do verification validation on that? Now, you know, you can do Q subs with the FDA prior and discuss with them, have more of an open forum so that, again, you're really picking the right scope relative to, you know, how far down the rabbit hole do you really want to go with machine learning, especially in a first product introduction.
So I think that with my interactions with regulatory agencies, the first thing that you have to have is full transparency. So if you have your AI in a black box, you have to be able to take it out of that black box and really show regulatory folks what it is that you're working on and how it functions. If you can't do that, it's going to be a hard bar to pass for them to say, yeah, we'll let you go with that. So is that possible in AI?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. Like the various levels that, you know, I described, really we're at the ground floor. And, you know, the FDA, you know, in 5 years from now, even maybe in 3 years from now, they're going to have a lot more headaches and stomach aches trying to do verification, you know, look at the verification and validation because of the evolving and learning nature of AI and machine learning. So it is possible, but, you know, we're at the embryonic stage of AI, and where it goes in medtech is going to be incredible. It's going to, you know, ultimately yield better patient compliance, better patient outcomes. But, you know, once it starts learning on its own and modifying and making its own decisions, there is going to have to be a whole different matrix on how the FDA qualifies that. And maybe AI can help AI do verification validation as it's evolving so that there can be checks and balances. Right now, you know, we're at a pretty base level, you know, with regards to AI and doing verification validation for that.
Yeah. Henry, you know, we hear a lot about the use of AI in drug discovery and clinical trials and manufacturing. What do you think are the most promising near-term uses that you've seen as a clinician?
It's a huge question, right? So on the kind of very important level, I think Harvey illustrated some of the hugely impactful things that can be done in educating patients and follow up. One thing that is gaining a huge amount of ground now are AI scribes. So basically, right, the patients see multiple physicians. It's true in the ER. It's true, everywhere. As you sadly, physicians have to churn through patients, and part of the problem in physician burnout is just documentation, and so having an artificial intelligence that can listen to the listen to the patient as well as the physician during the interaction, and then generate a appropriate note that can be quickly reviewed. That's highly impactful immediately. But I'd also like to add that, and I assume these companies are doing it, maybe not overtly. But I see that also as a tremendous data source. Right. So if we look at the way patients are talking, the way physicians are interacting with a known diagnosis, right, then you can start educating systems to be applied to the unknown diagnosis, right, and to really, enhance diagnosis into the future. So I think that, starting with the scribe, it will be incredibly impactful. And then the usual things, I'm sure we all know, the ability to identify compounds that affect biological mechanisms that had not been appreciated, right, through machine learning techniques, unsupervised learning to be able to identify, off-the-shelf drugs that impact a disease. I mean, I think that is going to speed drug discovery and impact trials into the future, and then producing completely synthetic compounds. That's over the next 10 years. But I see those, multiple levels as so impactful.
And we're already seeing companies that are, employing AI in their drug discovery efforts, and some having success with it, some not. And I guess it's going to take a little bit of time to weed out, those programs that are not as successful and not as productive as with anything else. Henry, one last question. The avatar that you showed us, is there a plan to test that avatar against actual people doing that exam and compare the results?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the critical thing that we all appreciate, that we need to test these things. We just suppose, we are at kind of a discovery set right now so that we can then have a validation set, and that's critically important, not just comparing to normal controls as we have, but like real disease controls where the disease can be mimicked. So that's part of the validation. But allow me to tell you about one study that we did in which we looked at the physicians who are doing these videotaped examinations and then compared by various means their compliance with the way they were supposed to do the evaluation, right? This was not a free-for-all physician examination. This was a set clinical trial outcome measure that's supposed to be done in a certain fashion. And the compliance was pretty poor. The correlation between the directions and the way it was actually done by a group of physicians who are all board certified in neuromuscular disease, which may have been a problem from this perspective, was like 0.6, which then adds to variability in the outcome measures. So.
Okay, well, those are important things that we need to keep in mind as we start to deploy these technologies in our practices and in our laboratories. Harvey, you talked about trust. And what do you think we could do to build trust with clinicians, with patients, with regulators, with our hospital administration when you are trying to deploy these AI-driven tools for patient care and for diagnostics?
Yeah, good question. I think at the end of the day, it's all about transparency on both sides. The doctor needs to, how many times have you gone to a doctor and you sign all this paperwork, right? And you don't know what you're signing. And in that paperwork is, hey, we're using AI. But are we doctors telling our patients we are using AI XYZ? So number one, transparency on both sides. And then on the patient side, are you using AI and how are you using it? And then me as a doctor educating you, not just on healthcare, but the good, the bad, and the unknown and ugly of AI. And so that's the second thing. As clinicians, a lot of us love pictures and graphs, and we want to know, how did you get to that point? And so having our AI models paired with a graph GPT model, that way, if I say AI got to this conclusion, myasthenia gravis, this and this, having the transparency, showing you the graph that says, okay, for us doctors to be able to say, okay, I see how they got to that conclusion. If you want to go into the weeds, it's all about trust. So me as a doctor, what data did you use, Henry, when it became myasthenia gravis? Did you use just Washington, D.C.? Was it a certain population? Is there a population that missed? And so we need to be more transparent to each other and now have a food label for the AI. So then I can go to Henry and be like, oh, okay, I see it was trained on this data. It's lacking this particular population, but that's okay because the population I take care of is actually the same that he has, and I'm good with this model, as opposed to, you know what, I'm in this part of the world, I would love to use this, but it really doesn't apply because I really need this data set. So that kind of communication will work. And then lastly, I just want to say, it's kind of like being married. You may fight with your spouse. I have an idea, you have an idea, we are at odds, but then we educate each other. So with that same analogy, let's educate the society so that we increase our AI IQ, and then we understand these things, and then we can get there faster.
So let's say you have an entrepreneur in this audience that's working on an AI application. How do we make sure that their AI model is both scalable and interoperable with their healthcare data system? What do you do? How do you plan for that?
Yeah. I have no stake in what is it, CHAI, and they're doing a lot of data sets and analysis of the data sets and making sure that it is done correctly. And I think they're on to the right subject here. We need to evaluate. Second thing is we need to do more of federated or swarm learning, where let's pretend all of us here at this conference that has the video on, we're all representing a certain institute, but we all have the same mission. I don't want to trust you with my data, but I want to benefit from your data. So why not we pull our information into an AI model and it's training each other's data and we're benefiting from each other, but yet we keep our data private. And those kind of algorithms is what's going to really take us to the next level.
All right, you bring up a good question in how do you manage data privacy, which are really concerns for the public and for a lot of institutions. Greg, what do you do?
So ultimately, looking at that transparency is key, right? With regards to the data, how it's used, clearly how the AI works, and how decisions are made. So ultimately, you want to loop in clinicians in development, in co-creation as well, and publish your validation results, often making it explainable relative to the AI and its interfaces, and consent and education is very critical. So ultimately, there is a lot of ethical transparency. There's trust that needs to build through evidence and usability. Ultimately, it has to be prioritized within the open standards of developing your AI through designing modular architecture, that ultimately silos data and patient data along with cybersecurity. So it's hard to fully describe it, but it definitely planning from the get-go and planning for it within your development plan, within your road mapping is key in order to keep data privacy private. And, that in the end, that is one of the top three critical natures of development, with regards to AI and machine learning.
So we did have one question from one of our attendees about AI. One of AI's shortcomings is that when it doesn't know the answer, it just makes something up. So what do you do in order to prevent these hallucinations? What do you do in order to prevent bias? And what are the other real shortcomings of AI that this audience should be aware of? Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, in today's day and age, it's not happening that much in med tech. Maybe it's happening in ChatGPT when you ask about some things. Ultimately, you need to use the AI that's between your ears right now in order to cross-reference it, right? So like Harvey is a trained professional ER doctor. So while he's using AI, and machine learning, ChatGPT and others, he's using his own AI and balancing everything out so that whatever he's proposing has efficacy, and it ultimately makes the patient physician relationship better. So that's my advice is, let's not totally lean on, whatever's being served up to us from AI. We need to be skeptics. We need to understand, what's reality and what's not. Don't use it as a total hands-off Tesla vehicle. Use it as something that's propelling you, but, you're steering the ship.
So if you had to give advice to the folks who are listening in terms of how to create an AI mindset for their company or for their organization, what would you say to them today, and what would you tell them to prioritize over the next 2 to 3 years? And let's hear from each of you. Henry?
Yeah, so I'm in at the university, right, and teach medical students, residents, and stuff. So I'll kind of put that from that perspective. So,
Yeah.
There has to be real communication with our students, our trainees, on how to use this appropriately, right? It was mentioned already that there are these hallucinations and just the broader point of like, oh, when AI is wrong, that's a horrible thing. Well, human beings are wrong frequently, right? So I don't think that should be considered too problematic over time. But I think we need to educate our learners on how to use AI appropriately. And physicians in particular who don't like to rely on anybody else to make a diagnosis. There was a wonderful study of diagnosis made by a physician with an AI, and then the physician alone, and the AI alone. And the AI alone won. And that's because the physician has this, emotional response to somebody else telling them what to do. So I think we need to educate our learners on how to do things. We have to educate them on what AI can do for you. And I think actually the promise here is in advancing medicine is to improve diagnosis, but at the same point, allow physicians to really be more in tune with their patients. Because yes, I get it that there are ways for AI to be emotionally responsive, but the wisdom of a physician interacting with another human being, I don't think that's going to be a substitute for a long time. So I think, kind of bottom line, that's what I tell my trainees, to embrace this with that restriction, to again focus on getting that patient in front of you better, regardless of what it takes.
Greg, you've counseled lots of companies.
Yeah, so
how do you counsel them to build an AI focused?
I try my best. So ultimately, when we're working with a client, we try to lay out practical steps for the healthcare, application relative to the executive building an AI-informed organizational mindset. And that's really where it's at, is dialing them into that organizational mindset. So the practical starting point is providing leadership and the staff with foundational AI literacy and training, clearly outlining AI's capabilities, its limitations and ethical considerations. And ultimately, we encourage executives to have pilot projects to demonstrate tangible benefits, right, and foster organizational learning. So additionally, promoting interdisciplinary collaboration and integrating medical, technical, ethical, regulatory expertise, ultimately that will establish a robust governance structure that embeds a sustainable AI-informed mindset across an organization. And that is easier said than done. But, in understanding what the goals are, and laying out that roadmap will mitigate risk for them with regards to, them really targeting a proper AI thought process.
And one of our attendees put in the Q&A, maybe in this case, our students should be mentoring our professors. It's possible that's a good point. Harvey, give us your take on this AI adoption mentality, and you also mentioned a blind spot by institutions. Tell us, what is that blind spot, and how do you overcome it, and where do you see us going with this?
Yeah, so many things to that. Big picture, I tell everybody, it's like riding the bike. The more you ride it, the more you don't need the the handlebars. And then the second thing is talk about how you're using AI. I mean, really, that's a true secret here. Like I showed you some examples, how I see it, and you're like, and I can see by the screen, people are like, oh crap, I'm gonna start doing this or why I could see it. So the more we're sharing, coming to seminars like this, the more we're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And then the second thing I want to say, it's about your creativity, how you see the world. Don't feel so threatened about AI. It's your creativity plus AI putting it together. Man, now you're on steroids. Now you're going to create something. And then as far as the blind spot, it's interesting. I feel like one thing that comes to mind immediately is a lot of hospitals don't realize that some of these models, not some, these models can have a data drift, meaning today it's doing my project, but because of positive reinforcement or negative, it starts changing the model. And maybe my population has changed, maybe certain things have changed, and now that model that I've created no longer works. And the blind spot for the hospital system is some of these hospitals are not set up for someone checking on these models. And sadly, some of these vendors in the contract, they're not doing it for you either. So keep aware of that.
So thank you all for a great presentation, a great webinar. Let me end by an anecdote. Last year, I put in a provisional patent for Biofectura because we produced two biosimilars, one for ustekinumab and one for golimumab. Both treat ulcerative colitis. And there have been studies that show that if you treat patients with one therapy, they get about a 20% remission rate. But if you treat patients with two of these therapies, they can get up to an 84% remission rate. So I said, wouldn't it be great if we can use AI and a biomarker to figure out who are going to be and predict who will be the responders to that particular combination of biologics? So I went to several AI companies, and the first thing they asked me is, where's your data set? And my answer was, I don't have one. We're a biotech firm and we don't have data sets. And so the most important thing that I'll tell all of our audience is AI is only as good as the data set you bring it to analyze. So make sure that before you start on a project, you know where you're getting your data from, you know it's clean, you know it's good, and then go to the AI companies and ask them to perform their magic.